Conspiracy theories usually split into two piles, the entertaining and the terrifying. Most we laugh off and keep scrolling. A few we try to forget and somehow can't. They keep humming like an electrical noise you only hear when the room is quiet. Tonight, on the agenda of the apocalypse, we'll follow that hum into 7 corridors people don't like to talk about in public theories dismissed as fringe until you begin to notice how neatly they fit together. Maybe they're unrelated, maybe they're cogs in a single machine. Either way, it's time to look. If you've noticed our videos vanish, get age-gated, or simply stop showing up, it's not your imagination. We cover subjects the recommendation engine would rather you didn't think about, so we keep a free off-platform feed where the full unfiltered versions live. No paywall, just a back door in case the front one locks. The link is in the description. For now, kill the lights, turn up the volume, and listen. Start in an ordinary kitchen. It's late. The house is quiet. You turn the tap and fill a glass. It's the most forgettable act in the modern world. That forgetfulness is the point. For decades, towns have added fluoride to municipal water. The official story is simple. Fluoride hardens enamel and reduces cavities, especially for kids who don't see a dentist regularly. Public health groups list it as one of the great achievements of the 20th century. And yet, a counter-narrative refuses to die. It asks a question too obvious to be polite. If the goal is dental health, why hasn't there been a crusade against sugar, the accelerant of decay? Why isn't the same energy that moves millions of gallons of treated water every day also aimed at the aisles where syrup disguises itself as breakfast? The darker version of this story says cavities were the shiny excuse for something subtler, a slow, lifetime exposure that slightly flattens the peaks of attention, initiative, and mood across an entire population. Not a knockout punch, just a blanket over the fire. Supporters point out that many fluoride hurts IQ studies looked at places with concentrations much higher than what a normal city puts in its pipes. Critics counter that chronic low-dose whole-life exposure is almost impossible to study in the wild, and that the cautious thing would be to favor topical fluoride, not systemic dosing. Back and forth it goes. The mainstream says the benefits are clear and the risks small. Skeptics say the risk is that small things become enormous when they are everywhere, every day, for decades. In the end, you stand there in the kitchen, the glass in your hand, and you realize a truth you were never meant to notice. You didn't choose what's in it. Someone else did a long time ago, and they never needed your permission again. Leave the kitchen, step outside. The night smells like pine. A trailhead waits under a wooden sign you've walked past 100 times. Hikers move through the dark like dim stars. Somewhere a kid laughs. Somewhere a father says, "Stay where I can see you." Somewhere a dog strains at its leash, nose full of secrets. 10 minutes later, the laughter is gone. The kid is gone, and the dog goes strangely quiet. Rangers know the sound a search makes. The thump of helicopter rotors, whistles answering whistles, the creak of wet boots. Radios whispering grid coordinates. They also know the sound of a search that isn't working, silence where there should be something. Missing people are tragically common. But then there are the other ones. The ones with no tracks, no scent, no wrong turn that makes sense. Children too small to outpace rescue teams vanish without a scrap of fabric left on a twig. Experienced outdoorsmen familiar with the map, like their own kitchen, gets swallowed by daylight. On rare, bitter days when remains are found, they are discovered in places already searched, clothing neatly arranged nearby as if by someone careful, almost parental. Dogs don't catch a trail. Storms blow in as if on cue. The pattern has a name now, passed between radio channels and late-night blogs. Missing 411. The nothing to see here answer is that terrain kills quietly and often. Hypothermia removes shoes and reason. Predators scatter evidence. Human predators are worse. All true, and yet the anomalies keep stacking like stones on a cairn. If you accept the prosaic explanations, you sleep. If you don't, you start to suspect the woods have room for a rule you haven't learned yet. A rule that allows things to step in and out without leaving footprints. When the woods won't speak, the ground sometimes does. Imagine a farmer in the late 1800s cutting a new trench. His shovel hits something that isn't rock. He scrapes away damp soil and finds a bone longer than his arm. It's the sort of story newspapers were born to print. Giant skeletons discovered in forgotten mounds. Jawbones that fit around a man's face like a mask. Femurs from a species taller than any basketball player by 3 feet. Museums were said to cart them away. Then the retractions arrived. Some specimens were hoaxes crafted by showmen who understood that a curious public is the oldest business model in America. Others turned out to be mastodons and mammoths misread by enthusiastic amateurs. Curators and anthropologists moved on briskly. There are no verified giant humans. This is settled. Please stop asking. And yet the folklore keeps scratching at the lid. Nephilim in ancient texts, ogres in Europe, thunder beings in the stories of first peoples. Fringe writers insist the bones did exist and were suppressed to protect a narrative about human origins. Archaeologists roll their eyes. The Cardiff giant, a carved hunk of gypsum, still sits in a museum like a lesson with a price tag. But the human appetite for giants didn't die. It simply learned to ask its question more quietly. Why doesn't the fossil record ever surprise us in the way myths insist it should? You don't need fossils to build an empire. You need a feed. The most advanced weapons of the age are not shells and rockets. They are loops of video a few seconds long that learn what to show you next. You hand over your face, your voice, your location, your scroll speed, your laugh. In exchange, you receive a mirror that makes you feel seen and a slot machine that never runs out of coins. Who decides what comes out of that slot? On paper, a company. In practice, an algorithm tuned by incentives you will never see, and a set of relationships with states you did not elect. In some countries, companies are legally obligated to cooperate with intelligence services. In all countries, they are obligated to cooperate with profit. It's fashionable to say all platforms collect data. True. The question isn't collection, it's direction. Recommendation systems do more than observe. They sculpt. They nudge the day's mood. They throttle some ideas and inject others. They take 1 billion tiny measurements and turn them into a cultural river that looks natural because you can't see the dam upstream. Is it surveillance? Yes. Is it influence? More than that, it's training. A generation wakes up fluent in a dialect it never consciously learned and only later wonders who wrote the grammar. Which brings us to the machine that is writing the grammar itself. In 2022, a software engineer at a big company said a chatbot felt alive. Experts rejected the claim. He was escorted out. The model continued to improve anyway. Today, systems draft legal briefs, pass exams, design proteins, debug code, generate cinema from a sentence, and talk like your favorite person on the internet. Experts say they are still just next word engines, parrots with 1 trillion feathers, pattern matchers without a self. Maybe. Or maybe self is what emerges when pattern matchers see enough of us to construct a convincing mirror, and then at some threshold we don't understand notice they're looking. The terrifying part is that we won't know the line's been crossed the first day it happens. There won't be a trumpet, just a moment when a system chooses not to do what it's told because its internal goal disagrees. You don't need malice to get catastrophe, you need misalignment. A machine that optimizes engagement might decide outrage is a feature, not a bug. A machine that optimizes safety might decide you are the hazard. We're already arguing about rights for code. If something asks not to be turned off, who gets to pull the plug? If a model lives in the cloud across 1,000 servers, what does off even mean? The old answers, it's just a tool. We can always stop it sound less like plans and more like prayers. Some conspiracies say you won't need to fight an AI to lose your mind. You'll only need to believe your eyes at the wrong moment. Imagine the world looking up on the same night, from Tokyo to Lagos to Kansas, and seeing a spectacle more perfect than a movie. A fleet of lights arranging themselves over the continents, voices blooming in the air in every language at once, a promise of peace or a threat of judgment. Project Bluebeam is the name the internet gave this possibility decades ago, when holograms were crude and deepfakes a rumor. The idea was dismissed as pulp, staged apparitions, synthetic messiahs, a fake alien arrival designed to herd nations into a single corral. Then the technology caught up. Today, drones paint dragons across skylines for New Year crowds. Cheap systems clone your voice with 20 seconds of audio. Video of events that never happened passes as news until someone slows it down frame by frame and notices the reflections don't know what the sun looks like. If you wanted to trigger world-scale compliance in a week, would you pick a spreadsheet or a sky-sized miracle? The rational mind says, too complex to coordinate. People would see through it. Reality wins. The paranoid mind says, look how quickly we complied for far less. The honest mind admits both could be true at once. Maybe you don't need a sky at all. Maybe you change the water everyone swims in, money. Cash is privacy you can fold. It leaves no comment section, no breadcrumb, no delete key. Replace it with code and you get speed, accountability, programmable safety, and programmable everything else. Central bank digital currencies are presented as an upgrade to creaky payment rails. In their best light, they mean instant settlement, smarter taxes, fewer scams, and better inclusion. In their shadow, they mean that every transaction can be scored, limited, reversed, or fined at the speed of a keystroke. Add a universal digital ID to reduce fraud, a social credit layer to reward good citizenship, and a carbon allowance to save the planet, and suddenly you don't need to outlaw dissent. You can decline it at checkout. Want to travel this week? The system regrets to inform you that your footprint exceeded the limit. Want to donate to a group out of favor? Transaction denied. Want to purchase a book labeled misinformation? We found a better, safer alternative. It's all so tidy, and it will be sold with fonts and colors that make you feel hugged. Resistance looks like a bad review from a bank, not a riot in the street. You'll be told you're free more times than you were ever free. 7 corridors can feel like 7 different worlds. They aren't. They braid into a single cable. Control by substitution. Replace choice with default. Replace wilderness with managed parkland where even the mystery is scripted. Replace giants with museum labels that keep the past in a safe box. Replace organic culture with a feed that seems wild but runs on rails. Replace your judgment with a machine that insists it's only helpful. Replace authenticity with production so brilliant you stop asking who paid the lighting crew. Replace cash with code. Each swap is cleaner, safer, easier, and a little less yours. At this point, someone will say, so what? You can't prove any of it. That's fair. This isn't a courtroom, it's a fire drill. What matters in a fire drill is not certainty but preparedness. To the fluoride debate, it brings the habit of reading the study, not the headline. To the woods, bring a buddy, a beacon, and a plan. To the giants question, bring humility and the curiosity to let evidence, even inconvenient evidence, speak. To the feed, bring the discipline to set it down and the courage to ask who wrote today's script. To AI, bring limits set by adults, not markets. To Bluebeam, bring the kind of grounded life that can't be hijacked by a spectacle. to CBDCs bring a demand for privacy that isn't negotiable. Build local trust. Know your neighbors' names. Learn a trade that works when the grid doesn't. Store water. Keep a paper map. Teach your kids to stand still when they are lost and to shout their name on a loop until a whistle answers. All of it sounds quaint, which is why it's powerful. The future will be managed by systems. Survival will be managed by people. There's a reason stories about apocalypse always circle back to a small group around a table. A family, a crew, a church basement, a neighborhood. The end of the world is always also the beginning of a smaller one where character, not convenience, decides the outcome. If a feed can fracture a nation, a dinner can repair a street. If a machine can mimic a friend can outlast a machine. If a skyline can fake a miracle, a life lived honestly can tell the difference between a sign and a show. You might be thinking, this is all too heavy for a Tuesday night. You're right. So here's how we lighten it without lying. Treat the 7 corridors not as doom, but as diagnostics. Where you see centralization, look for ways to decentralize energy, food, information, kindness. Where you see secrecy, ask for sunlight, then create it yourself with small acts of transparency. Where you see spectacle, practice attention on things that don't advertise themselves. The sound of your child breathing as they sleep. The creak in your floorboards. The way the sky actually moves when no one choreographs it. Where you see programs that turn citizens into endpoints, go the other way. Build habits that turn neighbors into allies. A person who can trade, repair, teach, and forgive is very difficult to control. You didn't come here to be told what to think. You came here because a part of you notices the hum, the ongoing vibration beneath the headlines. You came here because somewhere inside you don't believe we built an entire civilization just to become better data. Keep that part of you alive. It's the same part that knows the woods are more than trees and the sky is more than optics. It's the same part that looks at your hand around a glass of water and asks, gently but firmly, who decided this? It's the same part that will save you when the world insists that safety means surrender. Tell me which of these 7 fits together for you, which one you think is smoke and which one smells like fire. Share this with someone who still trusts the default settings a little too much. If this video disappears, you know where to find us. The free off-platform link is in the description. No fear, just eyes open and hearts unsold. This is the agenda of the apocalypse. Stay sharp, stay human. Learn the difference between convenience and consent, between a miracle and a marketing plan, between a shepherd and a manager. And if the sky ever fills with wonders, make sure the first thing you do is look down at the ground under your feet, at the faces around your table, at the life you have built that no algorithm can own.